it just continues to resonate, and it's my story. And I tell everybody, you got to own your shit. You got to own your successes, and you got to own your mistakes, and you got to, own all of your flaws and recognize what your strengths are. And we'll dig into that in a second. So my story real quick, born and raised in New York is something I take a lot of pride in. Spent the first 15 years of my life working in advertising and marketing, worked client side at American Express, Sirius XM for about 5 years, when Howard Stern was coming on board. Just a real awesome time. And then I went back to agency life for a little bit. And before I pivoted into recruiting, my last stop, I was group director over at Vayner Media, working with Gary and his team over there. And for me, that was the top of the mountain. That was a pinnacle. I reached it, right? That's where I wanted to be, the hottest shop, the hottest agency. Gary was really hitting his stride at that time. And I was just like, this is exactly where I want to be. First couple of months in were good. And then things started to take a turn. I had some things going on outside of my life that affected me, some personal things. And it got the best of me. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't bring my A game. And I knew it. I knew that I wasn't delivering. You felt it. There was conversations had, and it was going downhill fast. And then it was almost 4 years ago to this day, I lost my job. I got fired. And, it took me a while to say that. I would spin it around and put the optics on it like I left. I needed a career change. But that's the truth, man. I did not perform what they hired me for. And I think the agency takes some responsibility as far as setting me up for success. But I own all of it. I didn't bring my A game. I had a lot of shit going on. And it was at that moment, that day, that I got fired. And Gary did not do it. HR handled it. But Gary came into the room afterwards. We sat for about an hour talking about life and talking about what's next. And Gary's only a couple years older than me, so he could really relate. And he is genuinely, truly, the guy you see is who he is. He's all heart, and he means what he says, and he says what he means. And he sees me with my, head in my hands like this, on the verge of tears. And he's like, well, what's next for you? What are you going to do? What's on the horizon? I got to be honest with you. I had drinks a couple weeks ago with some buddies who do recruiting. And for years, they keep saying, Adam, you'd be awesome at recruiting. And Gary's eyes lit up and he's like, dude, that's crazy. He's like, let me tell you something. At this stage of your life, you need to stop focusing on the shit that you suck at and double down on your strengths. And I sat back and I let that digest for a minute. And he's like, well, what are your strengths? I said, what you and I are doing right now, networking, chatting, connecting. If you're in New York, schmoozing, whatever the hell you want to call it. I know the New York market inside and out. I know marketing and advertising. Gary said, dude, you fucking be great at it and go out there and do it. And with that, with his push out, with the wind at my sails, with Gary behind me, I ventured into the world of recruiting. And it wasn't without, due diligence and trepidation. It was scary, man. And I went and I talked to every recruiter I knew. I interviewed at a bunch of places, and I knew I couldn't be at one of those big shops where it was pick up the phone, dial all day, wear a suit. I was never a suit and tie guy. That was not for me. But, I did it, man. I jumped in, 35 years old, starting a new career. It was humbling to say the least, man. And the other piece is not burning bridges. And I think that's another point as well. When I talk about getting let go, I have a very good relationship with Gary and some of the folks over there. And I don't think a lot of people who get fired from jobs have that. And I think it's important to have that kind of foresight. And listen, at the time, when you get let go, the last thing you want to do is, have drinks with the person that fired you. That's not going to happen. But if you think about it a little bit in your mind about the long-term play and put things into context and start to change that mindset, just overall thinking about relationships not being short-sighted, not being transactional. It's not always, what could you do for me? Maybe let me just give you 10 million things of value. And then in the near future or the late future, whenever it is, it'll come back around.
And by the way, I treat this is almost synonymous with happiness, right? And it's not a destination, right? It's a sort of fluid thing, and you fall into it, and then maybe circumstances change and you fall out of it. But the formula is essentially this: success equals a state of optimally integrated being. In other words, when all of the aspects of your life, what you say, what you think, what you do, your work, your play, your family, etc., your community, when they are in alignment and serving a common purpose, then that begets better relationships, it begets success. And this is about the self-awareness now, right? A part of it, exactly that, is knowing what is that for you, knowing what your higher self is, or your super ego is, right? You've got your real conscious self, and then there's this higher person that you strive to be. The second you know what that is, and then everything that you try to do is at least aiming towards it, you're there. You have to know who you are.
I agree 1,000,000%. And I didn't hit that point until the last 2 years of my life, until hitting close to 40. And I think it's not just an age thing. I think it was just life circumstances, having my second kid, being, 3 or 4 years as a homeowner and living in this community that I'm in, changing careers and all those pieces kind of coming together. And I think there's one add-on I would add to that. All those elements in this pyramid that you're forming up to the top, they all point in one direction and they point to your North Star. The North Star is your reason for being. But here's my concern about LinkedIn. The core purpose of LinkedIn when it was built was to be a platform for professionals to connect. And there's a lot of purists out there that stick by it. There's a lot of the new wave people coming in saying that, you know what, content creators are content creators, but as long as you're adding value. And that's my true piece right there. I am seeing a 100 million, zillion, whatever percent influx of content creators on LinkedIn that have amazing production quality. They tell a good story, but their value add is absolutely fucking shit. It's garbage. They're adding nothing. And I'm seeing a lot of people out there that are talking about things that are way over their head in their experience level, but it looks good on camera and it sounds good. I'm not calling anybody out on it. But it goes back to being authentic, right? And not just being on LinkedIn to get the views and get the eyeballs and monetize you as an influencer. Just because you have 1 million people on LinkedIn following you, that doesn't mean shit. It's a popularity contest. It's turning into a popularity contest just like the other platforms. It comes down to actually adding value and helping people learn something, to grow, to inspire them. Now, that's subjective, but so is my opinion. You can find me on LinkedIn, Adam J. Posner. Please follow the Poz Cast. It's my new podcast coming out. And I put this podcast together to really help those that are in the career journey, that are looking for actionable advice, tangible advice to help drive their career forward. Ultimately, I'm really trying to help people find that inner tenacity so they could actually drive their career forward. You could subscribe on all the major channels. You could find me at www.nhptalentgroup.com and reach out to me on LinkedIn. Always looking forward to connecting with new people.
Awesome. Where do you broadcast the podcast? It's on iTunes.
The podcast is on all the major platforms. It's anchored on the Anchor. It's anchored on the Anchor. You could find me on Spotify. You could find me on the iTunes as well.
On the iTunes. Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on. It's been fun talking shop with you.
Julian, you're the man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it, man.